had a lot of injuries in my life, but amazingly, I have never actually broken a bone. I may have fractured it. I don't know. Maybe it's just been stretched tendons or pulled tendons. But if you look at my hands, you can see that there are dots and scratches all over them. Whenever I've cut my hand, I don't even put a band-aid. No band-aids, just let it bleed. And I'm a bleeder. I'm a gusher. I bleed. There was one time when I was training wrestling, I think it was back in 2001. Some dude actually somehow got glass on his knee pad, a little shard. And he came down and somehow his knee hit me right on the bridge of my nose and cut me here. And that bled, made blood all over the ring. I had to rush to the bathroom and try to clear it up. I looked a little like Ric Flair, Crimson Mask. If you know your professional wrestling, I was the Crimson Mask. I was Ric Flair. And I had other injuries in professional wrestling training. A big issue is, running the ropes. You get cuts in your back from running the ropes. And also, if you're rolling in a ring, it's not as clean as you would hope. So you can cut up your arms on that. So that's happened, and I guess maybe sometimes I've put band-aids, but a lot of times I haven't. I mean, you should have. You should put band-aids. Band-aids help. But, and if you have certain injuries, that's what they'll tell you to do. Just put a band-aid on it, because that's all you can do. You can put a band-aid on it. Cut open your head. Put a band-aid on it. Split your lip. Put a band-aid on it. I used to fall a lot when I was out with the, when I was doing the graffiti runs and the exploring. There was one time I fell really hard. I smashed my freaking arm into a rock. I looked at it later. My arm was covered in blood. It was scarred. I didn't even feel it. I'm not even sure if I put a band-aid on that. I may have just actually back-teamed and alcoholed it, cleaned it up. I probably put a band-aid on the scar so that it would clear up eventually, a big band-aid. But, that's made my life. The biggest injury I've ever had, actually, came when I was really young. And there was more than a band-aid here. There were stitches. This entire part of my face was fallen. Maybe you've noticed it, maybe you never have. But you'll see if you look at one eyebrow and then the other, there is no mark like that. This eyebrow has a slash through it because a bicycle wheel hit my very young face and fell off. At the time, my mom tells me I didn't even want to go to the hospital. I was like, this is awesome. I can look like a freak for the rest of my life. I was really young. I think I was like 3 or 4. And I was actually happy. I was like, I'm going to be a freak. But, I got the stitches. I'm sure there was probably a band-aid put on top of the stitches to, protect it and everything. So, but even then, that's all they do. They stitch you up and they put a band-aid and they hope for the best. And sometimes in matters of life, that's the only thing you can do too. Just put a band-aid on it. My love life, as much as it has or has not existed, has been hurtful. And all I've ever been able to do when it crashed or burned was essentially put a soul band-aid on it. And, a band-aid comes off and sometimes it leaves a scar. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's there cleared up like it was never there. And those are the good times. But I'm pretty sure if you were able to rip open my soul and you could see where the heart physically was as a embodiment of emotion, it's cut deep. Cut up and down, scratches, like a mess. And because all I ever could do was put a band-aid on it. And other times all I could do was wrap it in gauze and use some masking tape. Sometimes that actually works. Sometimes that's better than a band-aid. I mean, the word band-aid is actually not what a band-aid really is. Band-aid is a trademark term owned by a company. Other companies can't even use that word. They have to call them other things. Look at your generic Band-Aids. They're not called Band-Aids. I don't want to even remember what they're called. I don't want to look them up. Just trust me on this. Band-Aid is not a Band-Aid. It is a product name. So even when they say put a Band-Aid on it, you don't actually always get a Band-Aid. You get some cotton attached to a piece of tape that's put on your body that somehow is supposed to protect it from infection and repair the cuts that have been caused, and may or may not leave a scar. But scars make up people. So sometimes it's best to not even put a Band-Aid on anything. It's best just to ramble on. You ramble in how you talk, you ramble on in how you live, you ramble on, you roll on. I'm hoping one day I actually do break a bone, because then I'll get a cast and I'll find out how many people love me when I see how many people actually want to sign the cast. Because that is the one experience I never got to have as a child. It was, oh, you've got a cast and everyone wants to sign it, and it's so, you know, revealing of who, you know, who's real and who's not real. But that never happened. Because as injury prone as I am, and boy am I injury prone, I don't get real injuries. I get superficial injuries. I get partial injuries. I get injuries that leave permanent damage, but you can't see it. Or sometimes you can.